Hey there, everyone. Mary Cristelli with PCC Wellness and Rec. Back for another Wellness Where You Are. I hope everybody's doing well. Tonight, we're going to actually talk about self-care and kind of these little pods that are involved in self-care. So the first thing I wanted to start with is what self-care is not or doesn't have to be. Self-care is a really popular term right now. It's been gaining a lot of traction over the last year or so, definitely in the last year, that it's something special that we do on occasion to kind of recharge ourselves. And typically the way that self-care is being marketed to us, to people, is that it needs to be something that takes a lot of time or that costs a lot of money. And those certain things like that, like going for a massage or soaking your feet or getting a pedicure or a manicure or those types of things, those things that typically come to mind when we think of self-care activities, definitely those things can be self-care. And it is absolutely okay to do those types of things sporadically throughout the month and the year if that's something you enjoy. But actually, self-care is something that we do for ourselves every single day. And they are big acts like going for a massage if we want to, if that's something that fits into our lifestyle. But they're also small things. And so there are 6 different pods that I break self-care up into. And we're going to go through some of the common activities and some of these things you might be like, oh, I definitely already do that. So I want to just talk about the ways that we currently are caring for ourselves and maybe provide you with some additional ideas if you're really trying to incorporate more self-care activities into your day and your life. So the first one I want to talk about is physical self-care. The way that we take care of our physical body is that we get movement. So one way to incorporate self-care into our day is to get at least 30 minutes of physical activity if you're an adult and an hour of physical activity if you're a child or a teenager every single day, at least 5 to 7 days a week. So getting some form of movement. This can be vigorous exercise like running or rowing or lifting weights, or it can be not so vigorous. It can be moderate or even light movement like yoga or going for a walk. So just purposefully moving your body at least 5 days a week for 30 minutes to an hour. The type of food that we put into our body and the way that our relationship with food can be a self-care, a way that we incorporate self-care. So making sure that we're incorporating fruits and vegetables into our diet and listening to our body's hunger signals. So listening when our body says, I'm hungry, and giving it good fuel and nutritious fuel for it. Tuning into our body and listening to when it says that it's sated. So not eating until we feel really full or stuffed, but eating until we feel satisfied. And then, again, fueling it with good, nutritious food for it. Getting enough sleep. So prioritizing your sleep, making sure that you're getting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Establishing a calming bedtime routine, turning off screens at least an hour before you head to bed, waking up at the same time every morning and going to bed at the same time every night, or going to bed at the same time every day and waking up at the same time every day. And then, prioritizing your personal safety, reducing risky behaviors, engagement in risky behaviors. So wearing a seatbelt every time you get in a car, putting on a helmet if you're going to ride a bicycle or a skateboard, a longboard, or go on a motorcycle. Reducing or eliminating intake of alcohol, avoiding tobacco and other substances. So just prioritizing your personal safety. So those are 4 ways that we can, we care for ourselves, or take care of our physical self-care. So the second pod that I break it into is environmental. So we've got home safety, situational awareness, and then conservation type behaviors. So home safety would be, locking the doors at night or making sure that your windows and doors have functioning locks, turning on a light when you leave in the evening on like a porch light so that you come home to a dark house that there's a light on for you to at the entryway. Excuse me. Maintaining situational awareness. So when you're out and about in the world, so if you're going to cross the street, looking both ways before you cross to make sure there aren't any cars coming, crossing at crosswalks with green lights, so not crossing in the middle of a red light or anything like that. And sometimes when we're out in the world, we get this feeling in our body of like, something feels a little bit off. And so listening to that, and if you're having that uncomfortable feeling about like, I don't want to be here or anything like that, then removing yourself from that situation. And then if you're able to, practicing conservation type behavior. So turning off lights when you leave a room, not letting the water run while you're brushing your teeth or something like that. Changing out light bulbs to put in more high efficiency light bulbs if that's possible. If you wanted to, you could grow a garden, and if you have the outdoor space, you can do it outside, or you can grow it in pots, recycling if possible. So those are some ways that we can tend to our environmental self-care. We have professional or educational. And so this would be like if you're at work or school. So managing your time between tasks and breaks. So scheduling time for both. And this is both for when you're working on tasks or when you're studying or engaging in educational pursuits and stuff like that. So taking time, dedicating 30 minutes or an hour to work on a task. And then as soon as the timer goes off, letting yourself take a couple of minutes of breaks, a couple minute break. Taking a lunch break and avoiding working at your desk or working or eating at your desk and working through lunch. So just making sure that you're balancing that. One thing that we see with students, and I talk to the students who I have direct contact with, is that they'll really pour their time and their energy into their schoolwork, and it really, really feels stressful, and they feel really burnt out by the end of the day and the end of the week, and certainly at this time of year when we're coming up on the end of the school year. And sometimes it's a quick fix, and it's not a permanent solution, but it is a quick solution in the moment, is giving yourself the permission to step away from that thing and taking the break in the space that you need. That's how you can show yourself some self-care in your work or in your schooling. Making sure that you're engaging with your coworkers or your classmates, so having positive interactions with the people you work with or who you go to school with and you're able to see and speak to. So saying hi to people and developing those kinds of friendships. Having healthy, close working relationships we spend a lot of time at work and a lot of time at school, and having those good relationships helps us feel good. Choosing, if you're able to, work tasks or even educational topics. So if you're in school and you have to give a presentation and you get to pick what that presentation is going to be on, or at work if you're able to take on some new tasks, choosing things that feel challenging to you but also really exciting. It's good for our growth, our educational growth and our professional growth to try new skill sets. But picking things that also feel really exciting to us really helps motivate us to continue to pursue that, and we are less likely to put stuff off or really procrastinate. The last piece for professional or educational self-care would be to respect your capacity. So this is knowing when you can take on more, or when you're going to need to reprioritize things, or actually say like, no, I can't take more on. In those situations where it's like, oh no, this is not an option, you have to do this, is that ask for clarification. So talk to your teachers and say, okay, so we have all these different things, these are the deadlines. Or talk to your supervisor and say, cool, I'm excited about taking on this new task. I'm really looking forward to it, but can we talk about some of these other things, because I want to make sure I'm meeting deadlines and I'm doing a good job, but adding this additional thing to my load is going to spread me pretty thin. So can we reprioritize some stuff? And so respecting your capacity in a way that is professional and courteous and respectful of yourself and the person who you're having that conversation with. As far as social self-care, we've got a few different areas here. We want to, look at those family relationships that we have and spend time with our loved ones and have healthy interactions with them as well as with our friends. So establishing relationships that feel safe and trustworthy and fun for us. And one way that we can do that is to have some boundaries for ourselves. So know like what we're okay with, what we're not okay with. learning what it feels like when we feel safe with another person and we're able to share with them, practicing talking about like, oh, that bothered me when you said that, with people who feel really safe. So looking at relationships and kind of figuring out what are the different levels of relationship I'm going to have with the people who are in my circle. So those are some ways that we can tend to our social self-care. It is important that within our social self-care that the interactions we're having with other people, that we leave them feeling good. So a way that we can care for ourselves in those moments is if we're constantly walking away from interactions with other people feeling really drained or with our self-esteem just totally crushed, is kind of looking at that and being like, what's going on there? Is there something how can I adapt or adjust or address this so that I don't have to walk away feeling like that? Making sure that we're having fun with the people who we're spending time with and that we feel connected to them. Those are some ways that we can care for that one. Then we have emotional self-care. And this one these last two can be kind of tricky sometimes. They can feel a little big and maybe a little bit overwhelming. But some ways that we practice emotional self-care are that we get in tune with our body and learn what our feelings feel like inside of our body. So, do you know what anger feels like? Do you know what sadness feels like, or joy or excitement? Like, we feel our feelings somewhere in our body. So learning where we're feeling it and then giving language to it if possible. So being able to identify our feelings in any moment, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I didn't emotionally self-care today because I didn't recognize when I was feeling stressed out. But just every time you recognize an emotion that you have or a feeling that you're having and you give language to it, you are tending to your emotional self-care. Because acknowledging our feelings is just one way that we can help process through them. Another piece of that emotional self-care is to communicate. So again, establishing some of those safe, trustworthy, mutually trusting relationships, and communicating our feelings in healthy and appropriate ways. So kind of thinking about, when I get sad, do I withdraw? Do I shut down? If I'm angry, do I like break things or get really violent or have outbursts? How do I communicate when I'm happy? Do I keep it into myself, or do I have people to share that with, and how am I communicating it? So finding ways to communicate our feelings appropriately. And then also, how are we communicating our feelings to ourselves and expressing ourselves? So we can express our emotions in lots of different ways, of course, verbally with other folks, or we can write them down in a journal. Sometimes if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, they call it brain dumping. And so you just write every single thing that's on your mind, or you type it out. It's not an assignment. You're not getting graded on your grammar or spelling or anything like that. So just writing it all out, and then you can throw it away or throw it in a fire or keep it at the end of it, but just kind of getting those feelings out. You can journal or engage in art. So you can do something creative like paint or draw or throw clay, anything like that. Just some way to express those feelings. A big way, when we're feeling way too overwhelmed with our emotions and like things, we're not able to navigate that on our own, is being open and willing to reaching out to other people, whether those are our friends or our family or even someone else who you trust. It could be a coach or a pastor, someone with if you attend a church, it could be just any trusted, safe person to you is reaching out and saying, hey, this is what's going on and I need some help. And being willing to let them. I am a person who sometimes struggles with like letting other people like care about me. It's a very weird feeling to me. It's when I realized that, I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. And so reaching out, but also being open to letting that come back to you, the goodness and the kindness, the compassion come back into you. And if it's at a point where, maybe the loved ones in your life or the other trusted people are like, this is a lot for you to take on, being open to speaking with a professional like a therapist or another type of behavioral health specialist, a mental health care provider. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It can be one of the greatest ways that we take care of ourselves is to talk to an independent, like unbiased third party who's going to help us process through some of those things. The last pod is spiritual self-care. And this one, it can include having a religious practice, but it does not have to mean that. The way that I see spiritual well-being, spiritual self-care is that it really helps us feel us like connected to our sense of purpose, that we realize that we're a part of something bigger, whether that is like a universal bigger or that, I'm a part of a larger community. I'm a part of the Pueblo community, and how do the things that I do play a positive role in that? So, I mean, even in this moment now, how does this that I'm doing here, this Wellness Where You Are, how does this play a factor into the positive movement forward of my community that I live in, or my family, my friendship circle, my state, my country, my world, whatever that might be? Is that we just feel a sense of connected to something much bigger than ourselves, and that we kind of feel that we have a purpose. And that can be kind of tough sometimes, because I know that I feel like it's pretty common in life that we hit these moments where we feel like we're going along, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, what is my purpose in the world, and that kind of thing. And so we can care for ourselves and our spiritual well-being by taking a step back and kind of going back into like, what are the things that make me feel really good? What are the things I do that give me a sense of meaning, that feel meaningful and valuable to me? So asking yourself, what are some of my values? One of my values is compassion. So how do the actions that I do, the things in my life, how does my work connect to my value of compassion? How does my interaction, my relationships connect to my value of compassion? Just those types of things. And anytime we're thinking through these little things where we're having these small moments, we're engaging in self-care. It doesn't necessarily have to be that we go and take a spa day. Totally, again, can do that, and I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that every single day we get up, we have an opportunity to take care of ourselves and to to engage in self-care, and we're doing it all the time. And so what I want to encourage you to do is think about, or kind of practice, is when you're brushing your teeth, for example, or you go for a walk, that you have a moment where you're like, oh, this is self-care. And just that little shift in the way that you see these activities that you're doing is like, it's not just a monotonous routine. I like to have my teeth be done brushing, like the way it feels to brush my teeth, have my teeth be brushed. I don't like brushing my teeth. It's like a tedious activity to me. But when I'm like, oh, I'm taking care of myself, it feels like an act of love that I'm giving me. And really, that's what self-care is. It's like the way that we take care of us so that we can feel good and we can feel present in the world and give back to others. And, so that if it matters to you, to take care of other people. So that is self-care, like kind of in a basket. And I hope that's helpful, and that you heard some things tonight that you're like, oh, cool, I'm doing that, or that you have some things where you're like, cool, I'm rocking and rolling in all of these areas. And yeah, I definitely can take on something else. There are some other ways that I can show myself some more care. I'll be back in a couple weeks with another streaming session. I hope you have a really, really wonderful evening. Take good care of yourself.